Nice to meet you all. So I was brought in by Superfizz. Torsten Behrens, I'm a hobbyist. I got into Ethereum 2 all of a month ago and started creating some tooling, the S2 Docker tool that builds clients from source and makes it easy to run them.
And that's your nickname on the groups?
Yorick Down.
Okay, then we talked on the other day, yeah. You were consulted about this guy that had 1,000 Ether.
Yep.
Yeah, I just didn't know your name. Well, then I know all of you. Are we waiting for someone else?
It is 10:03 my local time. I think it's fine to go get started. I'm recording.
Superfizz is climbing your desk.
That's a little fist. He's telling me he wants to watch a different video. This is me parenting. Did you want this one?
Hey guys.
So check this out. This is me being professional. Jack was like, "Wear this shirt." We are recording. Morning, Alex. My intention here, I've kind of said what I look for in the due diligence committee. And my plan is to turn this over to you all and be an observer. I hope you'll recognize that I can't keep my fat mouth shut. So I'll pop in when I can't keep my fat mouth shut. But other than that, I intend to turn it over to you all. And I've asked Kirk to get the conversation started.
Before we start, is anyone taking notes? Or I'm happy to do it if no one's doing it.
I'm recording it, but I think it would be superb if you're willing to take notes. I'm not a good note taker at all. If you're willing and able, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm on it. Cool.
And while I am turning it over to Kirk, I know that everyone doesn't know everyone, so we should probably begin with introductions. But again, I'm out.
Yeah, let's do introductions. And Kirk was going to say something before we start.
Well, I'll go ahead and take the lead here for a little while, but I won't stay in it long. I had told Superfizz I don't have the ability or time to kind of lead such a group, but I reckoned I'd likely be a fairly active participant. And rather than me introducing first, I'd rather introduce later, since I'm facilitating at this moment in deference to Superfizz's request. So I was the one who asked that some of you introduce yourself on that other channel. For those of you who joined later, I will just explain the context of that. We had a little private, I'm not a Discord expert, but a private little channel, but apparently they can't get more than 10 people in there. So where we all put our introductions, at least 6 or 8 of us did, those have now gone into the ether. And maybe we could write something for the benefit of those who aren't on this call at some point and introduce ourselves briefly in writing to help those who aren't here. But for this call, let's have short, quick intros and run around. Let's start with Alex.
Hey guys, yeah, I started the Michigan Ethereum group back in 2016. Obviously this year we haven't been very active. And then I'm a mod of eStaker. So I just happened to see the channel and saw you guys were meeting, and I figured I would jump in just to see if there's something I can help with. But I don't even really know what the goals are. So I'll just be here listening, and if I can help somewhere, I'll let you know.
Well, you forgot to mention that you discovered the deposit contract deployment.
I did. I discovered the deposit contract 4 hours after it was deployed, but didn't know if it was a real thing or not.
But of course, it took a community that's somewhat decentralized to all agree on the deposit contract, because of course, a moment after something's deployed, it could be deployed in many instances. And I thought that was beautiful how we developed essentially a social consensus of where it was. There was a little work behind the scenes on that, but let's just go around. I'll keep asking, and Patricio, you were just saying something. Why don't you introduce?
Once you finish introducing, you have to pass the introduction button to someone.
Better.
Yeah, and I think most of you must have known me because I know all of you kind of well. I'm Patricio, I'm from Buenos Aires, but I'm right now in Denver because of life circumstances. I've been on Ethereum since 2015. I have a somewhat technical background. I care a lot about Ethereum 2. I care a lot about POAP, which is an NFT project. And I'm very happy to be on the eTstaker core team pushing initiative forward. On the due diligence committee, I don't expect to have much influence because I'm not that structured to do like real due diligence. I don't do real due diligence. I'm an ICO investor and we don't like due diligence. But I still think I can be very helpful because I know almost every relevant actor in the ecosystem, very likely in person. So I don't expect to have a primary role in this group, but I'm very happy to help with everything I know. And with that said, I pass the introduction baton to Michael, who goes by Umberika.
Hello, yep, I am Invetica, Michael Geeson. I'm one of the moderators for the eStaker community. I'm sort of the de facto Web2 developer guy. I think that's probably going to be the limitation to my contributions to this group. Hopefully helping develop the permanent home for the due diligence committee. I can help out in any other capacity that's needed, whether that's organizing, whatever, just being an extra hand. But that's who I am and what I do. Let's hand it over to Nolan.
Hey, I'm a eStaker moderator. I don't know. Some of you I think most of you may know me. So
Speak up, Nolan. I'm having trouble hearing you. Your volume.
Is my microphone not working?
Now it is.
That's better. Your volume's close now.
I'm eStaker moderator. I think most of you probably know me.
You probably know me as Butter. Been in the space since 2016 and joined Bitfly and the Beacon Chain project, I think 6 months ago now. And the journey started back in the Prism Discord channel. Yeah, and for the Diligence team, I'll probably be the guy that focuses on UX stuff instead of, I'm not sure how we are going to structure it, but if there were some kind of aspects where we were discussing security aspects, I think I would be the guy. But if it came to UX, yeah, that would be me, my part. Yeah, just pass it to Ransden.
Hello, everyone. Terrence here, one of the co-founders from Prismatic Labs. I have been involved in ETH2 since early 2018. We started out implementing sharding, and at the summer of the year, we eventually switched to proof of stake, and sharding will be phase 1, which is coming up. And my strength for this, I think, will be more on the technical side, and I can review the staking service and point out their pros and cons, their strength and their weakness. And I can also help with organization as well. So yeah, pretty much can do everything. So yeah. All right, I will pass it to Jeff.
Thank you for taking us. We're going to use those later for sure.
Thanks, Terrence. My name is Jeff Coleman. I've been lurking around in various of these blockchain communities one way or another since about 2010, following the Ethereum project since the beginning. I think a role that I often play is more of like a theoretical or white paper type review. That's something that I've done quite a bit of. First with a company I helped start, Ledger Labs, and then a new company that many of the same people helped start, L4 Ventures. Might have heard of some of the different projects we're involved in, like ETH Global or statechannels.org, some of those types of things. So I'm not organizationally gifted, and I'm notoriously unreliable, but from time to time I do pipe in with a useful comment or two. So that's me.
Awesome. I think I'm the last one left, right? Awesome. So my name's Madison. I call myself MC of the Ether.io, which is supposed to be an education platform about Ethereum. Skill set is doing all the things that other people don't want to do. So making sure the trains run on time, scheduling, stuff like that, I'm happy to do.
Well, it's very nice that we have a very like a huge, a very cool selection of talent. Like we almost don't overlap on what we do, and we have a fair share of technical people and non-technical people, and it also seems that all of us wants really to see this happening and to see this little initiative becoming something respected and something that really creates value for the community. So this is impressive.
Yeah, I didn't get to introduce myself. I'm Superfizz. Yes, what Patricio said, I think, is spot on. Like, there is a definite vacuum for this kind of product, and so it's going to be an easy sell. The work is going to be easy, and the product is going to be valuable. So, I'm Superfizz. Hank, I've been doing Bitcoin since 2011. I gave up Bitcoin for Ethereum in 2014, and I have been in love with the community building aspect of Ethereum since about then. I got excited about building a proof of stake community because I feel like staking can be a truly community effort. And so, again, seeing a vacuum, I was able to set some stuff up, and it's really caught on. So I'm excited. All right.
So something to mention, or well, this is quick. So whoever was going to say something, feel free to do after it finishes. One could think, why does the community need a due diligence committee? And that's a good question, because it might feel like overblown or exaggerated at this stage. But if we think that the future of Ethereum is to run on proof of stake, and that proof of work mining will be shut off, only handling the requests from the public to understand what's going on proof of stake and who's legit and who's not, and who is respected and who's not, it's already a full-time job and justifies the team. Thinking that ETH hash mining, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that is it must think that a due diligence committee is the least that's going to be necessary to handle all the misinformation and the drama that's going to happen around everything staking.
Thank you, Patricio. I want to chat about that more, but let me just do two other things for the intro. One, I'd ask Superfizz, can you tell us who's not here? I know JGM is not here, and I believe you added somebody else to the group, so let's at least put their names on the table, even without their introductions, so that Terrence can get them in the notes. Who am I missing besides JGM? Who's James? Is he James or Jim? He's Jim, right? That's Jim Mcdonald from Attestant. Okay,
Yes.
So I just wanted to know, I think he's going to be a very helpful contributor. I don't know him personally, but I was super pumped when I saw his name show up. I'd had one email conversation with him a few months ago, and he treated me so wonderfully. I just love those kind of people in our community. Who else do we have?
I believe I got Ben Eddington to join us. And again, these are people with significant other responsibilities. I know everyone, has significant other responsibilities, so I don't ever expect timing to be perfect. But I know that Ben had some concerns about a conflict of interest, but I assured him that there are other potential persons with conflicts of interest, but we're also all able to set those aside to perform due diligence.
And anyone else? I saw another name, Superfizz. You had asked, and I may be the one to say something about him, but I think you'd asked Colin Meyer. I don't see it. I first saw him introduce him in the group, but I saw his name get there, and I think Butta said, "Welcome, Colin Meyer," but nothing. So is he in or not? And if he is, I'll say something about it briefly.
Let me check. Oh, so, and that was, I did ask
him to the group.
Buddha to ask him while I was sleeping. I don't know. I didn't verify, but my assumption is.
Well, then we won't say any more
Yes.
about that, but
Nope. He is added.
Superfizz, would you take the,
Good job.
okay. I was gonna say there should be an intro maybe by you to have that in the written record, but I'll just say that I did have a conversation with Superfizz. Let me introduce myself and then it'll set up the context for Colin Meyer. I'm a guy who did an undergrad in EE, but as you can see, many, many decades ago, long before any of y'all were around. And I just grew up with microcode, so I was writing code in all those early years. But in many, many ways, I hung up those technical spurs many decades ago and moved into more of the management, project management space, mostly enterprise product development. So I was with IBM Storage Tech and then later on with startups in the kind of 2000, 2005 timeframe. But the short intro on me is I made a major shift in 2005 at age 50 and jumped over to the more, some people call it social science. I don't think it's a very good science, but I do think it's a very fascinating subject to study. And went and got a grad degree in economics, not because I liked mainstream economics, but because I wanted to understand emergent order and bottom-up social formation, which is exactly the kind of stuff we're talking about and doing here. So I went deep in the weeds theoretically on that. Started a spaceflight robotics company in 2012 that eventually sold. Learned about blockchain, not Bitcoin, in 2013, but was too stupid to get involved. 2015, I was looking to say, what is the most likely blockchain version 2 blockchain? There were many out there, Ethereum, etc. That might be the network effect winner. And I put my shot in on with Ethereum early in 2016. Went to work for Consensus later in 2016, got involved in the cleanup of the DAO, kind of behind the scenes. And so I go back and then worked 3.5 years in the space through Consensus. And then I retired in 2019. So I'm out of the space, not working. Consensus doesn't pay me a dime and I have no income from anything from Consensus. So I think that's just my quick intro. And then let me introduce Colin Meyer in that context. In the context of my Consensus involvement, I knew Colin Meyer. He's now, according to Superfizz, going to join us. You could think of him as somebody like, Terrence or what do you call it, Jim Mcdonald, or any of you who work in the space. Buddha works at Bitfly or Etherscape. I'm trying to get the name straight, Buddha. The point is, he's going to have some because he works at Consensus, and I believe he's going to have to introduce himself, but he's kind of doing a product-related job on staking and whatnot at Consensus. So he too will be somebody with both a legitimate and well-disclosed conflict of interest, but really some value to add to this group in the space, or at least that's the call Superfizz made. I just wanted to introduce him that much. So with that, and I should have said about myself, in the role I will probably have here is probably more of a philosopher and if you want to talk about, bottom-up philosophy and whatnot, call me on a rainy Wednesday afternoon and bring a big cup of coffee and we'll chat. I'm happy to do that kind of thing. I don't think I'll be as much nuts and bolts leading this, but I'm happy to help facilitate this conversation until we get things straightened out and know who's doing what next. What now with that?
And I can point out one other member. I believe Derek is also joining us. Madison, if you can give us a quick insight to Derek.
So Derek's my kind of co-MC at the Ether, which is the education platform. Derek's relatively, he's been sort of interested in covering crypto for a little while, became much more interested in the past 8 months. So he's a great representative of someone who's still getting up to speed, but is eager to learn more and really understands that mindset.
Great. And so while I'm looking to several people to be thought leaders or schedulers, I am also looking for someone who's able to be the timekeeper, because I know that these kind of projects can spin into several hours, days, or weeks of discussing one project. And I feel like for the sake of progress, we need to have someone who says, we're going to discuss this for 1 hour and then agree on a conclusion. I think that's the only way we can move forward. Is there anyone here who has the available bandwidth to be the timekeeper for the meetings?
I'm happy to do that.
You're hired.
Thanks, Madison. So do that both for, if I could ask you to do it 2 levels, do it short term on this meeting and think we will in a moment begin to talk about what's our agenda for the next, the last 30 minutes of meeting. But secondly, if you would, help us keep focused on the meta timetable of the near term that Superfizz outlined for us in one of those early posts, where he was talking about something we kind of wanted to aim for. I believe you had the 24th in mind. If you would, Madison, kind of run two separate timekeeping tasks and help, because we should be slotting in certain things. What needs to, I'm guessing we will end up slotting, I've been a long-term project manager. We will end up slotting in certain things that if we're going to make the 24th, you got to work backwards. This has to happen on the 23rd, 22nd. And we'll slot some meta things in. And I would just ask Madison to help keep both of those. Patrice, question. And then I'd like to talk about the agenda for the last 30 minutes here today. What do we think is important to get done today? Go ahead, Patricio.
Is there an agenda? Because I was going to kick off with a very controversial question. So if there's an agenda, let's look at it.
There is not currently an agenda. So here's how I feel on decentralized bottom-up stuff. Before we kick off with your next controversial question and figure out where that slots in, let's what are there? There's 11 of us here, one of us not on screen. And with those 11, let's talk about what do we want to get accomplished as the big objective for today. We've got introductions knocked out. And I'd like to get input from y'all, and let's put something on our virtual whiteboard, which right now is in our brains because there's no whiteboard present. Who wants to throw in thoughts on what we ought to accomplish today?
I'll jump in a little bit. When I look out at what the primary need for some better due diligence in this space is, I think like staking pools are like one of the biggest things. When we look at the whole staking thing, we've got this giant 32 ETH barrier to the whole thing, and like 32 ETH, that's just a lot of money. And the technical plan from the beginning, because there's various limitations why you can't just make that threshold arbitrarily low, is that we're going to solve that financial barrier through relatively trustless tooling that allows people to get in with a much smaller amount, and either to get in just with a smaller amount or to enter into some kind of distributed relationship that would be some kind of analogy to a distributed mining pool where they can run a node on some hardware that's available to them and get that barrier down. And I think that's one of the most important questions facing the launch of the Ethereum 2 chain is there a way for people who can't hit that 32 ETH mark to participate in a relatively trustless fashion?
Cool, thanks, Jeff. So staking pools is an important thing for our early topic. We haven't put that on the agenda for today, is Jeff's thought. Others?
Let's not limit the scope of the due diligence committee to staking pools, because everything around Ethereum needs due diligence. Like there are going to be likely tens of Bitcoin Chain Ether derivatives, where it's Lido Finance, some private staking service providers are going to have their own. Then there's going to be other satellite services. When phase 1.5 or 2.0 launches, there are going to be different breaches. And it can even happen that in the long-term future, there are going to be inter-shard communication services. So if you have your DAI in a shard and you want to execute a DApp in another shard, you have to use a third-party semi-trust provider, and you don't know if you want to go with this or that one. So let's not limit the scope of the due diligence group to just staking pools, because it could be a pity. So my vote is to expand the due diligence committee abilities to do due diligence on more related to Ethereum staking stuff.
Okay. So to help out, let me just break that into two parts. I think Patricio is saying, one, scope should be on our agenda today. So I want to get a scope conversation going, and I've written it down as a time that we'll explicitly talk about scope, and everybody, plus Patricio and I, will all get our opinions in. Secondly, Patricio has clearly made a point that while staking pools may be a timely and important near-term thing, as Jeff pointed out, there's some real value in obviously looking at staking services or clients and other kinds of things. So good.
Agreed. So what I'd like,
this agenda question.
What I'd like to see today is get an idea of what are the near-term projects we're going to look at and who's going to do the looking. So since that is a very broad environment right now, I don't think we're gonna, in the next couple of weeks, we're probably not gonna hit every single pool and every single service, but what are the most important ones we think we should be focusing on? And then what are the groups and when do they come back with first findings?
So I have a vision for this in the beginning. So my vision for this in the beginning is getting a top level domain. And that's something I've asked Michael to begin working on. And then rather than jumping right into staking pools, begin with a softball. And that is the 4 launch clients. Because
Hank, can I interrupt on this one? I want you to say that. I just don't want it to happen right at this time in the meeting because I want to still get the meta agenda agreed to because of time. And then Madison won't have to come beat on me to get done on time. So far I've heard, and I think we have good consensus on this, that we want to talk today about scope and we want to talk about near-term projects, what and who. And sounds like Superfizz will have some good input there for us. But does everybody so far agree that scope and getting our near-term projects talked about are 2 major parts of our agenda today?
Yeah.
On the agenda. Anything else for the agenda today? Then we'll loop back around, I promise, and talk about those things. And Fizz, you'll get in then.
So
what else for the agenda? Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
My suggestion would be to have kind of a metrics by which we are going to judge each of the projects. So I don't know, maybe one could be, like just a broad structure by which we're going to judge each of the project. Maybe it's UX, security, and how we are going to weigh in those factors to a total score. So we can apply these ideas on every project, and we have a rough idea what we're going to look at individually. Otherwise, just to be structured in general.
So metrics that, and let me be sure I understand, but metrics that we as a due diligence committee will use. What are our methods? What are our measurements?
Yeah,
right?
Correct.
Others for agenda today in our limited 30 minutes left.
Have you added having a TLD, like a top level domain?
You'd like to discuss having the TLD in place in today's agenda, Patricio?
Well, it's something that Superfizz wanted to get done, so it sounds like we
But
should.
does that need to be on the agenda for the 11 of us to talk about today? I'm just asking, is that what you want here?
Yeah.
Okay, TLD.
I think
Scope, near-term projects, TLD, any others? And I have one at the end.
I think within the scope, the question of scope, I think there needs to be a mission statement, or at least something that we can use when people ask, what is the Ethereum Due Diligence Committee about? This is what can be said, or this is what can be said on the website, or this is what can be said other places.
I like it. All right, with half an hour, I think that's plenty of things to get done today.
I agree.
Well, I agree, Torsten, but I would just say this, that we can have that be on the agenda and not try to resolve that mission statement here. We can get 2 or 3 people to go do that. So I think there was good agreement that the mission statement ought to be there. I'd like to throw one out then myself to just give you food for thought. I don't think it'll get answered today. If you ever take a philosophy class at university, one of the first things they'll teach you in the first week, like a philosophy 101 class, is that when having discussions, there's often a lot of unstated presumptions that if you don't talk about them, they don't get out on the table. And I want to put one of those on the table. And that is related to what I just put in writing on the channel, in which I shared with Superfizz a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to come at this from a a bottom-up point of view. But somebody else may come at it from the point of view, and I think it was the presumption of Bud a minute ago, to say, hey, we're going to be doing this, so we got to have the metrics. That's more of a top-down view. So what I want to put on the agenda to at least have a couple minutes of time is methodology. Are we aiming for something that is we, the group that's been selected by whatever method, imperfect or whatever, that Superfizz decided to call us up and say, would you be on this? Are we the oracles who have the answers, or are we, that would be a top-down approach. We're going to plan it, we're going to figure it out, what are our metrics, and we're going to rate everybody. Or are we going to put a process together, a machinery together that allows a more bottom-up emergent kind of solution? That's a methodological question, and I would argue it's worthy of at least having a minute or two to say, hey, maybe there's a strong consensus here. You know, everybody thinks it's something different than I think, which is okay. But I do think it's important that we don't let that presumption go unaddressed, untalked about. Does anybody have any questions about what I just said in case it was too confusing or too philosophical? Making sense?
Makes sense.
So I've got scope, some near-term projects, methodology, TLD, mission statement. On TLD, I'm wondering if that's a short one. Can we just assign somebody or somebody put their hand up and say, I'll go work on that? And they work with Superfizz and we don't have a lot of debate about it, or do we need a lot of talk about TLD? Anybody willing to do that?
It needs to happen, but so without a long discussion, it needs to just be a domain that we can agree on. Because if I were choosing and I went to addc.org, that's likely not available. I'm willing to have willing to suggest a 3-minute discussion on what that TLD should look like, and then ask Michael to find a TLD that looks like that.
Because I was asking a slightly different question, because I think we're so short for time. Is the TLD okay if instead we say Superfizz and 2 others who put their hand up right now, you guys go off and work about it and bring it back to us?
Yes, that's a fine solution.
Who else wants to work with Superfizz on the TLD, and then we can check that one off, I think, unless there's strong pushback.
Michael will be leading that because he'll be registering it, and I would look for you know what? We got that. We'll do that in our core group discussion. We can handle the TLD.
Yeah, bring that back. So that works for me. So I'm going to check off TLD. I do think having some statement of mission is the same kind of important thing. Having been the part of many, many groups trying to argue over mission statements for hours with well-facilitated professionals, professional facilitators, that's not going to get resolved here. So instead, what I'm looking for is it possible that 2 or 3 of you are interested in going and taking some stabs at that? Maybe you run stuff by Superfizz to see if it all fits. It'd be good if it's a couple of the moderators.
Yep.
Who know a lot about the history of the ETHStaker community.
I'm happy to work with anyone else or to come up with a couple or a few different options and present it back to see if you guys like any of the options, and then we can go from there.
Super, Madison. Who else wants to be in on that? I mean, I would like to add Superfizz for sure. Don't want to become overly centralized, but I think you've got a lot to say, and it'll be important, Superfizz. Anybody else on the mission who wants to maybe throw their hat in the ring? If you're interested in it and you become interested later, or if one of the people who aren't here, like Colin and Jim and Derek, see the video and then want to get involved, send a note to Madison and Superfizz and say that you want to plug in and you'd like to.
I'll throw my hat in the Superfizz. I'll work with you on mission statement.
I missed who that was.
Sorry, I should get
that?
used to doing the raid thing where I speak in the third person. Torsten Yorick Down is interested in.
Thank you for saying both of your names, Yorick, because I know you threw Yorick down on the channel. By the way, I didn't say this earlier. I'm Cantillon on the channel. It's the first time I've ever used Cantillon, but I happen to be. That's my small little business in Colorado, and I'm in Denver, by the way. Patricio, you and I need to get together for coffee or beers or something. But we have to do it early. The governor wants us off the streets by 10, which is easy for me. So anyway, Torsten Yorick Down would like to be in. Thank you, Torsten. So we've knocked off 2 of them that I thought we could kind of do that way, get subgroups looking at it. I think this team needs to talk a bit about scope and about the near-term projects. I think that's where we'll spend most of the rest of our time. And believe me, I'm just taking this role because it was thrown at me, trying to keep us on target here. The other thing is methodology needs a short amount of talk. Seriously, I'd like to get at least 3 or 4 people putting your thoughts in. Do you think this is more something where this august body, the group of people who become part of right now called the EDCC, are we the people who are going to fill out the papers and put the check marks in? Are we going to put something together that allows a bigger, broader community thing, which I call more bottom up? Please, 2 or 3 or 4 of you say something. I've said my piece on my opinion on that.
The only, I think one is going to be easier than the other. I'm going to say that. And if you allow for, if it becomes too, if we don't want to set out a framework or have a sort of rating process that we then share and people can then say, oh, we like this rating process, or, this is a way to evaluate things. Trying to create that framework or just provide long text oriented information, I think it's going to be difficult. And I think we also have to weigh, is it more important for people to know what's safe and what's not in the next month, 2 months, or is it more important to create something that's less centralized and a little bit more community driven?
Good input.
Right.
I just realized it may be different now rather than later. I think that's valid. People are trying to figure stuff out by the 24th. Agree completely.
Yeah, if I can weigh into that, I agree with you, Mattis, on this can be iterated upon. So we can absolutely have something that says, here are the criteria, and we've laid them down as best we can. And now we invite community feedback. All you people who know everything about security, poke holes in this, and then, version the thing and iterate.
Superfizz would like to welcome Jim Mcdonald to the room.
Hey guys, yeah, sorry I was running late as always, but it's not cool. But I'm here now, so there we go.
Hi, Jim. You'll find we did mention you earlier. We mentioned the people who weren't here so that you're in the minutes and in the video for people to see later. But glad you're here now.
Cool, thank you.
We have an agenda where right now we've knocked off a couple of simple things, and there's a couple of people going to go off and look at those things. And remaining for the agenda is we're talking right now about methodology, more top down, more bottom up. Several people had very good thoughts about we may need to be much more top down and just get it done with good security to help label some of the scammers quickly in the short term, even if we want to move the other way longer term. And then the other 2 agenda items, we're talking about the scope of this group and the near-term projects for the group. Thanks for joining, Jim. Others talking about methodology, others with an opinion on more top, more.
I'll just chime in quick. I think like the one of the big things in just deciding methodology is just clarity. I think there's a lack of clarity on a lot of these topics, especially for the less sophisticated users. And I guess that does lean a little bit towards the more top-down style because it's easier to understand if there's just kind of a really strict way of going about it that's consistent. But I mean, there's other techniques for bringing clarity, but I think simplicity and clarity are paramount.
Okay, I make the simplicity, clarity. Others? I would just say as one of the proponents of the more bottom-up approach that I want to back out now or back off and say that I accept what I just heard. And I think we probably have to be quite a bit more directive as a group, especially on this front end, and leave it as kind of an open question, an open debate to have anybody who wants to think about how do you make one sustainable longer term? How do you become, Wikipedia didn't become what it is today overnight. How do you become one of the jewels of the internet? And it wasn't that in 2003 when it was a few weeks or a few months old. Yet it is today, and it's freaking decentralized. And part of the reason it's as good as it is one party or the other, the insiders kind of get beat by a different process. So we'll talk more about that of those of you who are interested. But right now I'm hearing that it's definitely more methodologically top down. If anybody disagree with my summary of that for where we are right now. But happy to have the coffee chats with anybody who wants to explore that and think philosophically about the future. Well, because what I argue is long-term, sustainable and useful long-term may be different than short-term. Okay, well, let's go to scope or near-term. Let's talk about scope for this thing. Earlier, the discussions had Patricio saying certainly more than just staking pools. Jeff made an argument that staking pools was something we need to think about even in the short-term and long-term. I would argue, and I think I heard client software included, others on scope. What is our scope? How do we summarize that? Who wants to think about us writing a decent scope statement?
Well, I hope that things like a scope aren't things we will come up on a minute. They are things that evolve and they need to be fleshed out. And they are likely to evolve with time, likely a lot. So I would just say it's important to know what the scope is. We will just find out once we start rolling.
But the mission statement writers probably have some scope that kind of gets into their wording. So us talking about this will help the mission people when they turn some words into a few statements that we can use. Others with input. Patricio said it's going to evolve with time. Can't argue with that, I agree.
Yeah, I also agree with Patricio. I believe it's just important that we have a scope for the beginning. And I would say that for the beginning, it would be staking pools and staking clients. That's also the most important thing if we just look at Ethereum 2 right now. Once we have done that, I believe that the scope will grow once more people get like the idea in general, or more projects like the idea and want a rating as well. So yeah, I kind of agree with Patricio.
Cool. Other?
Yeah, I definitely say that I think that having a view to things beyond staking pools definitely seems useful. Maybe if we could offer a guiding principle for how we decide what's in scope. One of the things to me is looking at the people who are most served and kind of most in need of this kind of guidance. And I really have a strong priority for less sophisticated users who have some immediate needs that they're responding to. So I think like staking pools is one of those up front. And there will be others that are also important. Obviously, choosing a client is also one of those up front. So that seems in a similar theme, and there will be more.
Yeah, I can add something to that. I think my preference is I would prefer staking pool first as top priority, and then look at the client second, because essentially staking pool uses the client, right? So when you judge the staking pool, when you grade the staking pool, you somehow indirectly also grade the client as well. And given the resource and bandwidth that we have, we don't have that many people and we don't have that much time. Maybe perhaps putting staking pool as priority is better.
Yeah, if we're voting, I second that.
I think I heard two of you like what Terrence just summarized. That sounds like at least a strong initial consensus is forming. Staking pools, we were going to turn, the last agenda item was near-term projects. Can we agree, if poor Terrence is trying to write this all down, in the section of your notes it says near-term projects, is it fair to say staking pools is definitely one of them? I'm hearing a strong consensus on that. I don't know that it's as clear that staking services or clients are definitely out yet, but staking pools is in, correct? I see a lot of nods, so Terrence can write that on near-term projects. Put staking pools as a top item, Terrence. And you guys have sold that idea really well. So on scope, anybody else comments on scope? If not, I could try to summarize it and see what Terrence has in the notes. But I scope comments. Okay, well, it sounds like there was a consensus that we necessarily need to focus on things that that we can handle with the resource we have in the time we have. And old project manager, I call that time boxing. We've got a time schedule, we've got a resource commitment. So what we can do obviously has to fit into that box by the time and the resources we have. And so I'm hearing that, but I haven't heard any hard limits on our scope yet. It's related to Ethereum. That's in the name that Superfizz gave it. It's focused on staking in ETH2 in the future, but I haven't heard any description of hard limits. Does anybody want to suggest one, or just let that go on and go to the near term topic?
I would suggest that staking be kind of the zone that we're focused on in some way, shape, or form.
Agreed. I don't think we need to jump into proof of work or any of that stuff.
So no Bezu versus Open Ethereum versus TurboGap, etc. All right, I think I see a lot of heads nodding. So I think staking, we're really thinking about staking as a subset of all these two questions, and staking is a scope of where this group is now. Push back if that's not a fair meta summary. Well, I'm really happy. We've got 12 minutes left and we had 5 topics and we've kind of knocked them off. And that sort of raised my blood pressure a little when I was trying to think of a group I don't know. How are we going to get there? But now I'm feeling really good. We'll have some time to relax perhaps at the end. But if I have it right, if my notes are correct, and Terrence, push back if your notes are different, the agenda item we agreed on that we haven't yet got to is just the near-term projects list. And we already have the first item on that, staking pools. So can we turn to near-term projects now? Is it fair to say getting a mission statement is a valid one? I'm not trying to say it's the second most important. So this is an unordered list.
Mission statement, 100%. And we need the
okay,
criteria.
So there's a bullet for mission statement and a bullet for TLD.
Yeah, so if we're saying we want to focus on staking pools early, right? We need the criteria that we evaluate them by. So that's kind of a necessary prerequisite.
So one near-term priority, I'm just putting words around what you're saying, Yorick, Torsten, to help Terrence write notes, and you guys got to push back if I don't get it right. Is you're really talking about the staking pool. We've got staking pools as an important near-term thing, but now we've got staking pool criteria or a short-term criteria. What criteria will we use?
Yeah, we discussed that earlier, right? We need to come up with criteria that we use to evaluate things. So these evaluation criteria, we need those before we can start evaluating anything.
Very helpful. Thank you for, I'm sure Terrence will have that. We got to think about how we have a whiteboard so we can all see what we have. But what I'm going to suggest is after we finish getting the bullets on this near-term list that Terrence is writing down, we'll come back around and suggest maybe who could look at some of the different things. So staking criteria, Torsten, we're not done with. It's just on the list. Okay, Patricio has a question or a thought. Input, go.
Yeah, I posted it on the Zoom chat before. I think for the sake of productivity, we need to have a channel where we can discuss all these topics on a written asynchronical form, because we are on different time zones. We all want the due diligence committee to do well, but we can't really put that much time on it. So it's important to be the most efficient we can be. What seems to be the selling point on online communications these days is Discord. So I propose all of us get together on a single Discord server and we do channels for every topic on the agenda. So we have a mission channel, we have a scope channel, we have a whatever topic that was in the agenda, we can have a methodology channel, and then one can decide which projects want to take time on, because doing calls, it's definitely unsustainable. I don't think we can expect to have more than 1 hour call per week. So instead of discussing single topics and making 80% of the member waste time, because it's expected that each topic may have 2 to 4 people working on, let's just think on who manages that group. I think Buta is our Discord expert here.
Oh, I thought you were volunteering.
Well, we have a Discord expert.
Yeah, I will set it up after the call and
Perfect.
then invite everyone. I just have to set it up.
Is that going to be our?
Does anybody have a comment on that? I think I saw a lot of heads nodding, and I like the idea. But what do others think about Patricio's idea, having a separate Discord separate away from each staker itself? I'm fine with it. Others, yeah, thumbs up are helpful.
Sounds good to me.
Not a big-
Yeah, strongly.
Okay, I
agree.
see a lot of thumbs.
Sorry, Lamborghini,
Thank
you
you.
were
And who
saying?
is going to set that up? I missed.
Yeah, Buddha's
I will set it up.
Are you gonna?
Thank you,
Is that
Buddha.
gonna be our East Staker organization?
We can talk about this later, like on
All right,
it doesn't matter.
that would be my preference, but yeah, we'll talk about it later.
I have one meta comment on what Patricio said. He's singing my song in that there's no way you'll have weekly meetings and get all this stuff done, which is one of the reasons I tried to shoot off TLD or mission. You got to shoot it off to groups of people who then come back together, and asynchronous communication in writing will end up being an essential means by which we make progress as a group. I'll have to start a channel. Who's leading this next meeting? There is a second one, because it probably isn't me. I want to go back to the philosophical weeds. Okay. Anything else on the agenda item of near term? Did you want to add as a bullet?
I'm more curious on the project setup, which is how we set up this project, more like the infrastructure. I think we should set up a Google Drive so we can put the meeting notes in there so it doesn't get lost. And yeah, just basically project setup, Google Drive.
Can we
Possibly.
have,
Several.
just maybe perhaps like a channel on Discord and have files there pinned as messages or something? Or...
A related question: do you want these recorded meetings to be public on YouTube?
That's
I have no.
controversial.
I leave it to you all.
If I had to vote, I say yes. I'm normally a radical transparency person. I personally don't have secrets. Anyone could ask anything they want from me. So maybe not exactly this one, because we don't have consent, or maybe we can get consent. But from now on, I think it should be consensual that all our calls are public. Otherwise, building trust could be much difficult. Like if you are radically transparent, building trust happens on its own.
I guess the question is like, eventually we will be fully transparent and public, right? So given the current stage, like how public do we want to be, and how private do we want to be?
Super Fizz?
I love the idea of radical transparency. Even though I have an inclination to work on some of this privately, I think the radical transparency is important. I think the problem we're going to face with that is getting a lot of contacts and DMs from third parties who want to get in and promote and somehow grease their wheels. Now, I do think that transparency is worth that risk, but it is going to cause all of our inboxes to fill up with people who are trying to garner favor.
Right.
Just ignore them.
Well, let's assume that
Ignore button exists, exactly.
Conceptually, we will strive for transparency. Eventually, we will find out what's the balance, because it makes sense that if we are drafting something or work in progresses, I'd rather to not be transparency, to not generate false expectations, or to not fuel speculation. Like if we are working on the due diligence of a new something and we have working notes, it's better if they don't leak. But conceptually, our calls should be deemed transparent, so we can build the reliability. People can see how we discuss internally. So I guess we will discuss this on our Discord when it's set up.
Can I suggest one way to take it for this meeting, which now has 4 minutes left? Patricio, could you set up a channel to discuss the transparency issue, not with the intent of being there forever, but just to drive the damn thing to closure over the next week or two? And then we'll know explicitly if we have another call to speak, who has consent for, which way we're going when the call starts. Does that make sense, Patricio?
It does make sense.
Seem reasonable as an approach.
Can we all raise hands if you are okay with this recording being public?
Never mind.
Just a second, we've got some people who are faces and not hands, so I want to be very clear here. Put your hands up again so I get it.
Yeah, and Chef has said he's okay on the chat.
And then the other two people need to say something. Jeff and JGM, who's?
Chef is okay.
Jeff?
And Shim is okay too.
Oh, and Jim wrote, I am good. So it sounds like we have unanimity on this one. We're okay, which is fine with me. Thanks for making that so clear, Patricio. I'm real big on the idea of making the implicit explicit. And you just did that perfectly. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left. I promised Yorick we would get back to the topic of, it's on the near-term projects. We all agree staking pools, but he wanted an item on there called staking pool criteria. Could we just get
evaluation criteria?
Yeah, evaluation criteria. Could we get somebody who's going to A, set up that channel on the Discord, and B, which 2 or 3 people want to make sure they're focusing and talking about staking criteria? I know, Yorick, you in?
Yep.
Okay. You don't have to turn the mic
I
on.
would love to see GGM in.
Yeah.
JGM, are you okay? Jim?
Yep.
I heard a yep. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I would be in as well.
Anyone else?
That was Butter who said I.
Me, sorry.
Thank you. Great.
And I love that group. That
And
is
obviously
a
others can
strong
jump
critical
in.
thinking group.
All right. Well, I'm super happy where we are. Is there anything we said would be on the agenda that isn't? We're in our last minute of cleanup now.
Not really, just trying to, like, once we have the groups ready, we can start with getting a framework, I guess, and by which we're going to judge each of the projects. That's like the main thing. Once we have that done, I think it's going to be very quick and easy, probably. But getting there right.
Awesome. So it sounds like we've come to some consensus. Staking pools is a very high priority in our list in the near term. But we're not taking our eye off of staking services or clients. We just pools first. Criteria is important. We've got some people chasing TLDs and mission statements, beginning to draft something. We've got a method of communication, asynchronously on Discord. I'd say this was a heck of a good first meeting, and we've got a lot of threads running off and executing. I'm super happy to be here with all of you, and I will be talking to figure out with Superfizz who's going to have the privilege of facilitating the second call, if there is one. But I thank you all. Any other final notes before we close this one?
No.
On time.
Thank you for facilitating. That was the most efficient new meeting I've ever had with the group.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Yeah, great
Very
job.
Productive, very
Good
satisfied.
job, Kirk.
Enjoy your day, guys.
That's good.
Thank you. It turned the time 5 seconds ago, so we're there. Thank you.
All
everyone.
right.
Hey guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Okay.
Take care, all.
Have a good one, Kirk. Jeff.
I can't shut this down, so I'm letting you shut it down. Who started this?
It's mine.
All
But
right.
yeah.
See ya.
All right. I'm ending the